Hey, Damian Mason here with a question before we hop into this episode of the Business of Agriculture. If you farm for a living, you employ a lot of amazing technology, from your inputs that you put into the soil to the tractor that you sit in, your combine, the amazing data that it harvests. But has your soil analytics kept up technologically with everything else in your farming operation? I would venture to say that no, it is not. Sure, you check for your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium, your micronutrients as well. But what about disease pressure? Do you know what diseases and what pests you're going to face next year? No, you don't. But you can now figure that out with Pattern Ag's predictive analytics. Think about it. They can tell you now with testing what the likelihood of facing nasty diseases, things like cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome, what the likelihood of you having this in your field. Then you know how to prepare, how to treat, and where to invest your money. It's using technology to make you bigger yields and therefore make you bigger money. Go to www.pattern.ag to learn more. They are pioneering the way in predictive agronomy. Well, greetings and welcome to another fantastic episode of the Business of Agriculture. I got a show for you today talking about where the future of inputs might be going. I've got Lance Ramthun. He is the founder of a company called Farmers, and it's not the only company out there doing this, but it's going direct to consumer. Let's face it, we burn through millions of dollars of inputs out here in agricultural business, right? The people in the suburbs don't realize the amount of products that are being put on the acre, how much they cost, and it would frankly make their head spin. So it's a big marketplace. There's lots of stuff. And we also now are in an era, as you know, and I am holding this up if you happen to be listening versus watching, we all have one of these smartphones. So it seems like with technology and the era of Uber is direct to consumer, where you just buy stuff online going to work. Well, Lance is going to tell us about his company called Farmers and also about the future. So it's really a discussion about what this whole place looks like and how you go about ascertaining the products you need to be putting on your crops. So Lance, give me the background here, a little bit about you and then why you started this company.
Sure. Thank you, Damian, for having me on here. A little bit about me. I'm actually a crop advisor here in Northeast Arkansas, and I've done that since, this is, I think, my 25th crop. I started for a small co-op here in Jonesboro, Arkansas, is where I am. So started with them back in the late 90s. Decided to move on and start the business on my own and become an independent consultant in 2004. I deal primarily in rice, which is unique when I talk to individuals in the ag industry. You know, we feel like here in Northeast Arkansas, that's the only thing there is rice. But, you know, you go about 100 miles from here and it's more like the rest of the ag industry. But, over the years, we've diversified into other crops as far as my consulting company into soybeans, corn. We'll have a little bit of milo, a little bit of wheat, and that's about it. But so that's my bread and butter. That's what I do. We're starting to plant here today. Actually, it's the first day of planting for our area. But so that's the number one focus. What Farmers is and where it came from was honestly a hunting trip 7-8 years ago. I can't remember exactly when. Me and a friend of mine were. He's in the retail space, and we were actually his basic manufacturer space is where he was at the time. And we were discussing, inputs. And I told him, I said, the whole virtual atmosphere is really getting to be something that I think we can take advantage of. And I thought, I've got this group of growers. They all buy from different places and they take the price or they get the price that they can. Mm-hmm. And I can't help but think that if I could bulk every one of my growers into purchasing at the same time, purchasing the same product, that we might be able to glean a little bit of value from that, from a bulk purchase rather than all these one-offs. And we talked about it, for that trip, and it kind of died down. And, 5-6 years later, he and a group of guys came back to me and said, "Hey, I think, we want to make a run at this, but we want to make a run at what you're talking about. We think it sounds like a great idea." But they had some changes. we looked at it and said, why do we need to just focus on your customers? This is something that could have easily scaled nationwide or to a lot larger volume
Right.
of customers.
Well,
And
by
it
the way,
kind of,
I want to stop you there for a second, Lance,
yeah,
because I'm sure the listeners saying, okay, we've all been there. I mean,
sure.
remember, I've got people that are farmers that listen to this, and I've got people that are in the ag business, chemical, feed, seed, farm machinery, whatever. You were an independent. You quit working for an employer and became an independent crop consultant. And so part of
Sure.
I guess I got a few questions here. Part of the basis of being an independent crop consultant is you offer agronomic advice and service on how to help them grow a good crop. And you're supposed to be impartial because you are not with a manufacturer nor an ag retailer. And therefore, when you say, I'm going to charge you per acre, right? You say, you farm 3,000 acres, give me $7 an acre, and I'm going to be your contractual crop advisor on how to get the best crop from an agronomic inputs and advice standpoint. But I'm not going to be hustling you on buying my stuff because I'm independent. And now by doing what you're talking about doing, you lose your independence. You lose your impartiality.
Correct. And that was, you make a good point. And when I went independent, that was a huge sell to my growers was, hey, we don't have to worry about you pushing something on us that you've got sitting in the back of the warehouse. And yeah, to an extent, it does lose that impartiality, but it's also something that was an added value. I felt like it'd be an added value to my customer base. And that's honestly what I like so much about farmers is that it is unbiased. It is simply a e-commerce platform that connects buyers and sellers. And it rips down all of those boundaries that you would, refer to as.
Okay, I've got multiple questions, but let's go ahead and jump right into Farmers, the company, what it is today, and then I'll go back to the background that set it up.
Okay.
So what's Farmers look like right now? So if and I know, but our listener doesn't. Right. If our listener says, okay, what's it look like? What is this thing? Is it just another place that I can, is it just an Amazon where I can buy some crap for ag? Is that it? What is the story?
It does have an Amazon-like feel. It is an e-commerce platform that connects buyers and sellers. So we have a group of vendors, sellers on one side that simply, we tell them, hey, I want you to load your product on the site. And you can look at the site like a grocery store shelf. Put your products on the shelf.
Yep.
And let me know what you have to have for it. FOB, your warehouse. Tell me what the price you need to open the door for somebody to pick it up and it leave your premises.
Okay.
On the seller side, that's on the seller side. So on the buyer side, you can come in, shop through this, through these shelves and look and see. And all it is just products, just, the names of the actives, and quantities, minimum purchase amount, things of that nature. Because we got to have, let me back up here and forgive me for wallering here a little bit on my words, but we did have minimums. Now we've got it just by the case. Whatever that case amount is, that's what you can purchase. The price is right there.
Do you think was it originally then, like Big Lots is a store that comes to mind, or a closeout club or whatever? The idea is there's these remnants, there's this stuff that's not being, made anymore. Well, it's not really that way with ag products because after one season, it'll all be used up. Was it oddball lots? Was it oddball stuff? Was that the original idea? Was some retailer might have 3 shuttles of this sitting around, they don't even want it? What was the original idea that you had? Or is it just pure and simple? Let's just make this no muss, no fuss. Let's help people connect their stuff. What was the original?
No, that's a great question. The original idea was a bidding platform, and we can get into that later because that's coming back. But it got so complicated when we were building the software, and that we had times that you could bid and times that the sellers could come on and quote those bids and this, and it got out of control. Right. And I was talking to one of our vendors, and he said, "Man, why don't you just have a place where I can dump goods Is there, is there something like that? And that got me to thinking. That's where the clearinghouse model came from. I thought that's a really good idea. If you're long on something, just throw it on here. We don't have to have a bidding price. We don't have to have any kind of time limit or anything like that. And so, yeah, I mean, that is how the clearinghouse actually was born, was through someone that said, hey, I've got a lot of extra this, let me put it on there. Well, we got to looking at it and we thought, well, why does it have to be extra? Why can't it just be anything that you're looking to get rid of? Period. Right. So that's what we ask our vendors to do. Whatever you've got, throw it on there. See if you can reach another market.
So the stores, like I mentioned, in that concept, that was their thing, was that they always appealed to the bargain hunter that thought, okay, there's only 9 of these staple guns left at some place, and they just want to get the hell rid of them. And I'm going to go get a staple gun for 40 cents. But the thing is, with like ag inputs, it's not like you're discontinuing stuff all the time. And so it seems like the clearinghouse thing would be, shall I say, short-lived, because you're going to run out of stuff. And if you're making, your margin happens on, you're making a little money on the spread, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, and the other part that I guess you're getting ready to tell me is you found out that there's not a whole hell of a lot of difference between clearinghouse and just being a site, because it's all the same thing. You want something or you need something and you see something and there's a buyer and a seller.
Exactly.
Okay. How long ago, when was the first product sold on your site?
October of last year.
Okay. So here we are recording.
2 years after working on it.
We're recording this.
3.
And you've been in business before as a service provider. You worked for companies, then you became a service provider. And what a lot of people, even that have been in their own business, like you and me as service providers, you probably thought it was going to come together a hell of a lot quicker than it did, didn't you?
Well, yeah, sure. Exactly. And, then when it didn't, and it took 2 to 3 years, and we're bootstrapping this thing on our own. We're not taking any kind of outside capital. And we really are priding ourselves on that. After 2 years of busting knuckles trying to get this thing done, that first sale was not a big one either, but man, did it feel good.
Yeah. So it took you about 2 years to get it all rolling. You thought it was going to take 2 months. That's not atypical from these kinds of things. Yeah. And the thing is, you kind of knew it wasn't going to happen in 2 months, and I would know it going into it. I'd still be pissed off that it took me more than 2 months, because I'm so impatient, and I've been in business myself for 29 years, and I still think this shouldn't take that long.
Yeah, the idea is great. Should have happened. I shouldn't even have to make it happen. Yeah. Okay,
so I do appreciate the honesty, because that's great. So here it is. We're recording this in spring of 2023. You've had this thing up and running now for about 6 months. Harder to get products to sell, or harder to get people to buy products? What's been your push?
It is a buyer's market, and it is not hard to get people to sell. So it has not been difficult at all to get people to fill those shelves. We get more requests for, hey, I'd love to be a seller on your system. Yep. And we made a joke. We don't. I shouldn't even tell that. It's off color. But anyways, we didn't want it to be 15 to 20 or 30 sellers and 2 buyers. It's like the last girl left at the bar. Yeah. It's not a good place. And
the thing is, you run that risk because, like I said, you're not the first person that came up with the idea about, hey, let's make it so that while a person's in a piece of a farm machinery that steers itself, and they get out their phone and they say, I'm looking for product X. I mean, you can Google product X, you can search around. There's other entities that frankly have spent more money on marketing than your company has that I see their spots. So going to market seems like a challenge. So did you think that way from the very beginning, that the challenge would be getting buyers?
Yes.
You did. You thought, based on your background experience, walking those fields, selling products, talking to growers, you didn't think you were going to have a problem getting a chemical manufacturer or a fungicide, whatever, somebody to put ag products on your site.
No. Looking for avenues to sell is something that the vendors that we've got on the site are doing every day. And the opportunity to have a market that may be 800 miles away from them, lights them up because they've done all they can in this one spot. And they told me, they're like, hey, this is a great way for me to find a market in Louisiana or a market in Illinois. And here I am in Arkansas. So, that portion, and not that in the very beginning I thought it was going to be easy, but very soon I realized that it was not going to be as difficult as thought. Now, on the other side, the buyers, yeah, that's tough. That's why every company has a salesman, right? Because the buyers, they don't just come knocking to your door, especially when they've got retailers that are right there close by.
Yeah, I want to hear about that. And we're going to talk about our projection or our outlook about what the future might look like for ag retailing. Before we do that, I want to talk to the people listening to this that are business minded who want to make more money. Let's say you are a farm owner, you are a land owner. Let's say you farm ground and you rent it. Let's say you actually are working in ag industry and you still control some of the land back home in Ohio. Why don't you look at ways to get more dollars out of every acre? You can do that with Terra. Terra is focused on supporting farmers, landowners, farmers at every stage of a sustainability journey. So basically, Terra helps you plan, make, and maintain your regenerative management practices to improve agronomic, economic, and environmental sustainability on the operation for the long term. You want to learn more about this. We're talking about ecosystem marketing. We're talking about getting paid for things like nitrogen sequestration, nitrogen reduction, carbon sequestration, ways that you can add a new revenue source to the land, to the farming operation. Go to TrueTerraAg.com, TrueTerraAg.com/enroll if you want to enroll, but you don't have to enroll. You can just go there and check it out and learn about it. And then you can find out. You can take a sustainability test. You can take a soil health test. It's very simple. It's an assessment. Go to TrueTerraAg.com. All right. So you said something about having stuff, Lance, on the shelf. Do you actually have shelves, or is farmers really just a place out there on the cloud and everything else is warehouse somewhere else? You don't really have anything on the shelf. You just have a website.
That's exactly right. We have a website, relationships, and connections. We don't warehouse
not, and by the way, I was in no way diminishing what you do.
I understand.
Clearly, if you look at any metropolitan area, all of the construction that's been going on for the last 5 years around any airport or interstate exchange has been warehouses. There's lots of companies that are companies and don't have a warehouse with a bunch of stuff sitting on the shelf. They do have stuff, and it might be on a shelf, but it may not even be theirs. So your model right now is you don't own anything. You're an exchange.
Exactly. Asset light is what we want to be. Extremely efficient and nimble. We know what we're good at. Got a lot of, people behind me, the guys that, the group of us that put this together have a long time in ag retail, in ag chem. We come from different areas of the industry, but that's what we know. And like you say, there's plenty of warehouses out there. It blew my mind when we first started doing this. Guys would call and they'd say, hey, I need ship to or pickup locations. I need 4 or 5 of them. That was one of the first things I had to add to the site was multiple ship tos. I'm like, well, you're not at one local spot. And he said, no, we've got warehouses in southern Mississippi. We've got warehouses outside of Chicago, Illinois. We've got warehouses in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, we're trying to stay out of what we don't know and use people that do know that portion, logistics, warehousing, and let them be good at what they're good at and let us be good at what we're good at.
All right, so speaking about what you are good at, why don't you tell me what you're good at? Because this is, again, the business of agriculture. I always talk about business. And I wrote a book called Do Business Better. And I pride myself on being self-employed for 29 years. And you can probably appreciate this also. Then I follow that right up with saying, and there's no such thing as being self-employed. Because eventually, if I keep paying myself, I'm going to run out of money. You know what? I work for other people. I work for clients. I work for customers. So do you.
Right.
So tell me about what you do well and how you go about working for those customers to move this product.
What we do well is create a marketplace that is following the market almost instantaneously, which to me is there's things that are opening my eyes through this whole process, and watching people our vendors load their product on if it's out of line with the other products that are in the same, the same type of product, they're either not loading it or they're trying to sell it elsewhere. They're not putting it on the site. So when it goes on the site, it's staying, you can watch the marketplace as it's happening. That's one thing that I feel like we're, how to say this without inadvertently good at, if that makes sense, is showing where the market is. Now, invoicing and logistics, that's what we take care of. If a grower wants to get on there and buy something, we try to make it as simple as possible. The price that you see is what you pay.
Mm-hmm.
When you get invoiced, that's it. You don't get the product, pay, get the product, then get invoiced for shipping or get invoiced for something else that you weren't expecting.
Lance, are you carrying the paper on this? Because as a retailer or a website retailer, you don't have the bigger expenses. You don't have to have a big fertilizer barn next to the rail spur. You don't have, a bunch of environmental liability issues with a facility. But by God, if you're moving product between the company and this person, who's carrying the paper?
No, we're not. We're cash and carry. We are not cash and carry, but you know what I'm getting at.
When a product is sold from a manufacturer to I'm that farmer in Indiana, and I want this X product, and we're not even going to mention product names. It doesn't matter. If somebody wants to know, they can go and check out your website and see what products you have or what's available there. Point is, if I want this stuff and I say, you know what, I just want to go ahead and get it bought. I'm going to buy it from my buddy Lance. How do I pay? What? You said you do invoicing. Do I pay your company, then your company pays them?
That's correct.
Is that it?
Yep. Okay. Yeah, we do ACH. We started taking credit cards a couple of weeks ago. And what we do is we invoice them. They pay our company. We hold it in an escrow account. Let the buyer know that we've been paid so that we can initiate shipping. When shipping is initiated, we release the money to the seller.
Okay. So there's no chance that my farm, me in Indiana as the farmer, I gave you my money and then I never got my stuff.
No, I couldn't afford to do that.
Okay.
That'd be a bad idea.
Okay. So now let's talk about then the products. And I mean, you don't need to start naming every name, but is it everything I need? Is it every fungicide, every insecticide, every herbicide, and what do I have there?
It will cover, yes, it can cover everything you need. Now, is everything you need on there? No. Can we find it? Yes. That's part of the nimble portion of what I was referring to earlier. We're very open and we want to be as personable as possible. If you get on there and you don't see a product, it may be just because we haven't loaded it on our master system yet. Give us a call. We can load it up as far as just a line item. And then we'll start searching our vendors to see if they've got it. If they've got it, we can get it loaded, and it's pretty quick.
That's cool. Do you feel like that's part of your role is to go around and locate stuff, or do you think your role is just?
No, it's absolutely.
That's one of your roles.
I'm sorry, not to cut you off, but that's
all right. I need it.
That's been, that's something that our sales director that you were talking to earlier, that he spends a lot of days doing that. He's looking for product. Yes. Yep. Rattling cages, finding things.
Okay. Now, again, we're just talking about business stuff here because that's what we do. What if I'm a 10,000 acre operator in Northeast Indiana, which I'm not, but that's where my farm is. Let's just say.
Yeah.
And do I need you? In other words, would these companies sell direct to me? Is that where we're going? Or do you think that they want to just not be worried about trying to get a payment from a farm operation in out there in Indiana like me?
If you're a 10,000 acre farmer, you probably got a real good chance of getting by to buy direct.
Yeah.
I think where a 10,000 acre farmer in Indiana would find value in us is shopping the marketplace early in the season, January, February, March, that time span, to stock up on things that he knows he's going to need. If he's got a crop plan program that he likes to use, we're the place that he can come get those products at the lowest price possible.
Is your pitch just price?
Price.
Okay. Remember, I mean, okay. And I'm not in any way being, putting you on the spot. let's face it, we're business guys. If someone said, all right, I told you before hit record, you actually didn't know who I was. And I told you I was interested in what this space looks like. I speak at one of the ways I make money is I speak at agricultural meetings. And someone would say, Damian, what's your value proposition? Why would they bring you in and pay you money to get up and talk? Hell, just talking. I'd say, well, first off, I can make your meeting successful. That's my number one value position. And number two position, I'm going to tell you what's going on in the marketplace. I'm going to connect all the dots. I'm going to bring it back to your people, and I'm going to connect it to them so they understand what it takes to be successful in tomorrow's business place. And everything I say is also going to be delivered with a touch of humor. So there's going to be a showmanship to it because I'm funny. And now you know my value proposition. So when I ask you, is the value proposition for you, hey, we're cheaper? Hey, we can get stuff that other folks don't maybe get? Or is it something I'm not thinking of?
It's not necessarily cheaper. No, I wouldn't say that we're the cheapest out there, because I've got farmers that, that have, my current customers as a consultant, that have come to me and said, hey, what have you got on your site for this product X? And I tell him, and he's like, I can beat that. I'm like, okay, I get it. Some of the vendors that we're getting from are not the manufacturer, which
Understood.
most of them are not, so they're wholesale or something of that nature. There's already been a little bit built into it. So no, I'm not going to say we're, convenience of being able to pick up your phone, purchase something right there and have it delivered to your farm. I think that's our biggest value add, to be honest. And then from a
value proposition for you is convenience factor. There's a company that generally is cheap, but also sells convenience. It's called Amazon. So, and everybody's heard of them, and that's their thing. You can remember the whole COVID was fantastic for them. You could lay around in your pajamas, your sweatpants, and order whatever you wanted. And that there is something to that. Now they also have their own delivery fleet, but they didn't. They used, mainline delivery stuff. You do the same. So your thing is you're offering convenience. And is there a timeliness? Does it get there faster? Does that matter? Or does that is that even a concern?
Yes, it is a concern, especially when you get into heavy season. When farmers need, if they need 5 gallons of something and they need it right now, which is normally how it is. I needed it 5 minutes ago. That's not going to be our market.
Because someplace down the road is going to, obviously they'll send their hired guy and say, go get me 5 gallons of stuff down at the co-op, whatever.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why, and that's why retail will always have a place in the industry. However they have to move or stay to fit in the future, they're always going to have that. You've always going to have brick and mortar there for the farmers, because it's geographically placed. And we're not going to be able to meet those needs in a 6-hour turnaround. 5 days. Yeah, we've had that. We've had 3 days sometimes. And, sometimes it was a little bit too quick because we couldn't get, money.
So I wanted to ask you about that, where you see the online model versus the traditional retail model. And you just said traditional retail is not going to perish. It's going to change, presumably. And I want you to tell me how it's going to change. But you think it doesn't go away just because they do have physical locations. They are close to the farm, and there's certain things they do that you can't.
That's right. Yeah. And Damian, from being in agriculture your whole life, as well as me, that loyalty is not going away. Right. Farmers are loyal individuals, and that's what we love about this business. Mm-hmm. And, the rural aspect of it, however you want to call it. But yeah, you're always going to have something close by. I think where retail can, may look at us as a competitor, and I wouldn't blame them. At the same time, we can be an asset to them later on in the season. When they're long on something, we're going back to the clearinghouse now. When they're long on something, send it to us.
Yeah.
Load it up, put it on the site. We'll see if we can't move it. Something from Arkansas that we're finished with because it's, we start a little earlier than you do in Indiana.
Somebody in Wisconsin might still need it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What about then? Is there anything I'm missing in the way of like environmental? I mean, since you're not really possessing it, so you kind of get the benefit of not having to have all the OSHAs and EPAs and Arkansas Department of Environmental Management or whatever. You are fortunate to not have to deal with that.
We We have to vet our sellers and buyers and make sure they are complicit in their states. Yes.
Okay.
So we do have to watch out for that, no doubt. There is some pieces as far as the logistics. You get into EPA, things such as spillage. If there's a portion of it where it's under our ownership, gets poked, spilled, something of that nature, we've got to insure, and we've got liability purposes there. But for the most part, no, we have to make sure that everybody is licensed and legal.
Yeah. I'm intrigued by this, first off, and I think it's a neat story. And you're probably sitting there saying, all right, I don't know, you kind of grilled me a little bit, Damian. I just met you. Well, let's go ahead and do rapid fire here. To the person that says you're bumping into him at a cocktail party. That's the person listening to this right now that's sitting down and having a drink tonight. And I hope that many of my listeners do that because they're like, hey, this is interesting stuff. I'm going to relax and listen to this, get smart. Online retailers, even an ag, are a dime a dozen. How do you answer that? Or how do you, more importantly, distinguish yourself?
That we don't hold any inventory. We're asset light. We connect buyers and sellers. We're not.
By the way, that's great. That's great if I was going to be an investor, but if I'm a customer, do I care?
You should. You should care that I'm not taking a position on anything, because then you're getting the market price.
So that's, by the way, that's I was hoping you were going to go that way. I was actually not trying to set you up, but the point you're going to make is just like that thing of impartiality. If you're dealing with the guy or gal from the co-op and they say, man, you know what you really need to be doing? You know what you really need to do? You need to go out here. And now a lot of people think it's unnecessary, but it's really necessary. You got to go out there and treat it with product X. And then you say, you've pitched me on this 4 times. Do you have jugs and jugs and jugs of product X sitting around that you got told you're supposed to go out and unload? Well, yeah, I'm supposed to go out and unload the stuff. So the good news is you are not forced to unload anything, because hell, it don't matter to you. It's sitting on somebody else's shelf, not yours, technically.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right. I was glad also that you didn't say the thing that sets us apart is service. If you ever ask any business person, say, what do you do different than your competition? Well, service. And I say, that's kind of a bullshit answer, because you know what? Nobody says, hey, you know what we really suck at? Service. In fact, we hate our customer. If they call us, we won't even call them back. We're so bad at service, we just put on our website, screw you, customer. Nobody does that. Everybody says service separates them. And I think you can laugh at that because you kind of know it's true.
Yeah. Being in the service industry, you set yourself up for failure if you say, we're service. Yeah, I get it.
Everybody does it. Hey, ask any company owner, they'll tell you it's about service. I'm like, that's a neat thing. But like I said, answer me which company you've ever talked to that told you they were terrible at customer service. None of them will ever admit it. Where do you see this thing going? Not just for your company, but for the whole space. You've got the Nutrients of the world, which are the North America's largest ag retailer, right?
Right.
There's a couple of great big ones up in Canada that are, I've worked for them. You've got your 3 or 4 bigs. You've got a few really big co-ops, let's say 6 or 10, 12 big, that take up about a state. They probably don't go away, do they?
No, I don't think they do. We just want to be
talked about the loyalty factor. Independent ag retailers that handle stuff that maybe the bigs don't want to have, too small to fool with. Do the independents stay around? And I'm guessing they can, but they're going to be a little crafty, right?
I think that's where we come in, Damian. Yeah, the crafty portion of an independent that's having to find, that is having to search for markets. Yep. That can provide those specialty products that you're not going to find, in big box, if you want to call the others that. Yep. I think that's where we fit in.
Now, this will sound interesting. Amazon, is the reason that there's no more, Barnes and Noble,
mom and pops.
Yeah, or name the place, mom and pops. But then after Amazon successfully crushed them, now they start opening up actual physical locations. Do you ever see your company going backwards and having some locations?
Damian, I think that's what we can learn from the e-commerce platforms that have come before us, is that's not our direction. We want to I want to build a sustainable business.
Yeah.
And I want to stay directed yeah, not, I don't want to call that a trap, but not fall back into that. That's not our direction. I'm sure they all said that too when they were sitting having this conversation,
Right.
at the beginnings.
Right.
But
Right.
that's you've watched it time and time again. That's not our mission.
Don't you think that sometimes, and I guess again, is we do episodes where we talk about agronomics or whatever, sheep's wool, whatever these kind of things are. This one's a little bit more about the business stuff of it. I kind of just enjoy the entrepreneurial and that kind of thing about it. Is that, do you think that sometimes dilution of focus is where the devil is? Like you said, maybe you sat there, you strung together your first year pretty successfully, you strung your second year together pretty successfully, and then you sit there and say, hey, you know what we ought to do? And then you got a little too tangential and it bit you. But also they always say diversification of revenue. What are you supposed to do?
I don't know. That's a really good point, but it does seem to be a recurring method that everybody goes right back to where it started. But it does. The dilution is, that's a great way to put it. Dilution is where the devil is, and you just have to stay focused. And I want to run it like the companies. It is new tech, no doubt, but prior 10, 15, 20 years ago, you watched companies that were built and sustained doing the same thing, being really good at it for 50 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like now we're in the age where a company comes up, does great, 10 years, bam, they're right back to like, everything else or sold.
Mm-hmm.
That's that, you got to keep a really sharp focus, I guess is what I'm saying, to not get there.
Lance, for you were you were not a salesperson. You were
I'm still not.
You were an objective advisor, and you had an expertise in particular rice, but in agronomics, presumably. I mean, I was never one of your clients, but presumably you had an expertise in rice about how to produce the most with the least amount of inputs to get the biggest yield, to make the most money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is a different ball cap. This is a different hat altogether.
Yes.
And you technically, as you said one of our big things was I was never the salesperson. I sold my services, but I never sold products. And here you are selling products. What's been the biggest adjustment?
That 100%. And that's what I told the guys when we got back together and we were talking about building this out. I said, guys, you realize I've been at this for 25 years. I've had plenty of opportunities. I say plenty. That's a little bit arrogant. There's been opportunities to go into the sales force. I'm not good at it. And I told my wife that one time, like, I can't do sales. She's like, you sell you every day.
Right.
And I thought, well, you got a really good point. And so I tell them that, and they're like, look, we like the fact of that you're not heavily sales driven. We can hire salespeople. We need someone that can build this out from with an agronomic background, with a service background. So yeah, it's an adjustment for sure. Yeah, 100%. It's been a big adjustment, but I'm having fun with it. It's neat.
Yeah. So I got to ask you the next one then. Again, this is more entrepreneurial questions, but that's okay, man. It's about business. How many times have you thought you were a little over your skis and got scared?
How many minutes are there in the day?
Yeah, there's been a few times where you got a little over. You thought, man, I'm over my skis. I'm going to lose it. I'm going to wipe out.
Yep. I had when I started consulting independent in 2004, a businessman. He was a farm owner, and he started a grain bin company, had a construction company, started buying ground. Just an entrepreneur. And my father worked for him. He managed his farm. And he told me, he said, I'm just going to tell you one thing. If you're planning on doing this, he said, just bite off more than you can chew and keep chewing. And, I thought, well, that's easier said than done. But man, is it not true? I just one day at a time, but over the skis is a good way to put it. Yeah, it's gets a little tasking at times.
It's also fun. I mean, anybody has been there. There's a lot of little fun to it. I mean, when I sit down, sometimes when I thought for a month or two where I was over my skis, a little bit overdone, stressed, busy, and then they sit down and have a few cold Coors banquets and light up a cigar and talk to Mrs. Mason. And I'm like, I feel like maybe I recovered. I'm not going to wipe out now. That's some fun to that.
So you're accomplishing.
Yeah. Yeah, you are. So you told me where you think this is going. What question, this is our last one. What question did I not ask you? What thing did I not talk to you about that you figured I would, or you think that we should have addressed that we somehow missed?
Ooh, that's a good one. We covered the retail portion of it. I was nervous about that piece. You know, Damian, I'm not sure that we didn't cover anything.
All right, then I'll ask you this. Money. Yeah. And this is a big one. When I look at what this whole crop input thing, there's massive amounts of money being spent to, what right now, if you want to plant an acre of corn in Huntington County, Indiana this year, not counting cash rent, I'm thinking I'm going to spend what, $800, let's say. I know corn, you said, was not your expertise, whatever, on the inputs. It's a big number, maybe $1,000 an acre, with diesel, everything else. So it's a big number. A lot of it doesn't come back to the people in the middle. I got the manufacturer, and I don't think the margins are all that good. Is there going to get to where the margins are so skinny on this stuff that it's just like, who wants to do it?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And sorry, I shook everything there, but that's what we're hoping we can help with, is to the fat's got to come off somewhere, right? And if it's in the middle, that's probably where it's gonna happen. We're hoping that we can cut a lot of that out for guys, that we can come straight.
But frankly, hasn't a lot of it been cut out over the years anyhow?
Oh, it has. Yeah, it's super efficient compared to what it was even 10 years ago.
Right.
It really is. But it's open. I've gotten to see a world that I dealt with every day, but never looked inside of over the past 2 years, 3 years.
Right.
And it's still, I still feel like it's there. I don't feel like, I know that there's some there that can be cut out. So, but Damian, where do we, and kind of staying with the same point, where does it give? My growers ask me that all the time on the consulting portion of it. They're like, Lance, we got to spend less money this year.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah, where do we cut? Where do we cut? I've wondered that also. And you know what? Let's face it, we're in a really good farm economy right now. You and I are old enough to know that 2006 to 2013 was euphoric, great. That was really the first huge run since 1973 to 70 or 75 to 79. Yep. And now we're in a really good run again that roughly goes from 2018, 2019. Some of that was federal money till 23, maybe 24. What shakes out on the selling of products when we get shook? Because in ag, you just kind of know there's going to be a little bit of a letdown, right?
Right. I think we've watched some of that happen this fall and winter and spring.
Yeah.
All those products came to market back like they did in 2021 when everything got completely crazy as far as prices, and lasted all through last year. And we watched them come back to market in the fall of 22, and they just dropped and dropped and dropped and dropped as they're not getting used. Yeah. And it's been very interesting to watch. Hopefully that's what happens, to answer your question. I don't see, there comes a point where it just doesn't get bought if it's not right.
Yeah.
So
I'd say the manufacturer margins will probably get squeezed when we go through another downturn in ag. And I'm not hoping for that. I just know that those of us who've been around long enough know there's probably a downturn in ag. But you know what? We've been surprised before, but not by that much. No, I think we're going to leave it there if you're good with it. Lance, if somebody wants to look you up, where do they go?
FarmersAg.com.
And that's farm, like obviously the place, farm, and then like commerce, farmers.
Yep.
FarmerCE.com. His name is Lance.
No, FarmerCEAG.com.
Oh,
Farmers Ag.
I'm sorry, FarmersAg.com. Thanks for correcting me. His name is Lance Ramthan. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Damian. I appreciate it.
Till next time, we're always talking about the future. We talk about business, and this has been a good one talking to an entrepreneur that kicked into his next entrepreneur venture when he was in middle age. So you know what? We always keep good stuff here. Till next time, this is the Business of Agriculture, and I am Damian Mason. Well, that concludes another fantastic episode of the Business of Agriculture. This episode was brought to you by Pattern Ag. You know, everybody in agriculture understands the importance of soil health. We also keep an eye on our soil better than we ever did through advanced soil testing. But what if there was a company that provided predictive analytics, not just checking out nutrients and all the elements that are in there, but also could tell you the degree of risk you face with disease and pest pressure? That's right, Pattern Ag can do that. They actually can tell you, hey, you're going to have a real issue here. You can proactively treat for corn rootworm or cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome before the problem actually starts costing you yield. Go to pattern.ag, that's www.pattern.ag, to find the nearest rep that can help you start doing better for your soil.